Hey everybody, this is Travis with Kidwell Construction. We're going to do a review today on the Case 750M LT dozer. This is a 2015 model, so I've had it for about 4.5 years now. We got 1,850 couple hours on it, so enough that we can tell you all the pros, all the cons, and would I buy it again, yes or no. So let's start off with all the good points about this machine first. First off, the engine, as far as the machine, it's got tons of power, so it doesn't lack there. I think if you look up the specs, it's got like 41,000 drawbar pull, which is excellent for this size machine. Weighs about 22,000 pounds, so never run out of power on it. The other thing that's very good on it, if you look here on the C-frame, is what I call it, or your blade frame, is extremely heavy duty. Just as heavy duty as a Cat. I would say, in my opinion, on that part of it. So the blade frame's built very strong. It's got the good lubricated undercarriage on it. So the motor on this, it's got the Fiat engine in it. It's a 92 horsepower engine. It's very quiet, very easy to work on. Everything's really accessible on it. But you know, it's pretty clean in there. The other side is where all your main oil checks, filters, and so forth that you access. So it's a really quiet machine, got plenty of power. Of course, it's got the AC and all that kind of stuff on it. Another thing that's nice that I've seen, and I've only seen this on the Case dozers, is when you open up your door and latch it, you can actually unlatch it from the outside, and actually on the inside it has a button that you push, then you can unlatch the door too. So far of all the dozers I've tried out recently, Case is the only one that you can unlatch the door from the inside and the outside, which is pretty cool. Here's your hydraulic fluid check, washer fluid, hydraulic filter, it's all there, easy to get to. Okay, so the machine is very comfortable, everything's right where it needs to be. This is your up shift for your speeds on your transmission here on the stick. This is your accelerator, decel, which you can change it to an accelerator if you wanted to in the settings. It's good power, pretty good visibility, and all in all, it's a pretty good machine for especially what you find it for on the used market especially. It holds on a slope good. Like I say, it's quiet, got a lot of good features on that kind of stuff, so that's the good stuff. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the cons. So inside the cab here, one of the cons, if you notice here on the door, this is where the latch goes to the outside and hits out here. This is a piece of frame. If you notice right there, that is cracked. Right there, that has got a crack in the door. This is very thin metal here where this swings around. This big heavy door swings around and hits that latch on the outside. Looky there, cracked right down through there. Both doors, both sides, same exact thing. So another thing I've noticed on the Case engineers, when they had their videos advertising these machines, they were bragging about the sloped hood and all the great visibility and so forth. Well, it is a nice sloped hood they got in the front. There's no doubt about that. But come back here from the operator's point of view. Now, if you look out the window there, what do you see? You see an exhaust pipe that's in the way, you see the pre-cleaner that's in the way, and you see the sweeps that are in the way. So when I bought this machine, I didn't go look at it or try it out first. I just bought it from a dealer down Kentucky, shipped it up here. As soon as I got in it, the exhaust pipe actually went on up, straight on up, and over top of the sweeps. You know, so basically if you're sitting back here in a machine, operating this machine, this is what, like where my hand is, that was the exhaust. That was blocking. So that's what you get in this machine and you see. So I cut 2 feet off that pipe and shrank it down to where you could actually see out there. So if that stuff was out of the way and the sweeps were out wider to the sides, you would have that good visibility that sloped hood would give you. But because all that stuff is there in front, you have to back up twice as far to see what you've just done on each pass. True, you do go by the feel of your blade, but however, you know, if you can, you need to see what you did each pass. So that stuff is all, it's poor visibility really from the front of the cab or from the operator's seat really. The other thing, you can see the tip of the blade when it's straight, but when you angle the blade, we'll start it up here real quick and angle the blade, and I'll show you what I mean. Now what do you see? You don't see the tip of the blade. You can only see the tip of the blade when it's straight. That's it. Okay, so we're talking about not being able to see the tip of the blade from inside the cab, and the reason for that is one of the problems is with this blade, in my opinion, is it's not wide enough for the machine. The blade needs to be about a foot wider in total width so that you are out beyond the tracks a little bit more, because if your blade was out here another 6 inches, say, on each side, you'd be able to see that tip a lot easier from the cab. The other thing that does too is when you're grading, say you've got dump piles of dirt behind a dump truck or working piles of dirt around a house, if you're grading through a big pile of dirt, what happens? Well, your blade's so narrow that you get the rollback. So what'll happen is you'll get rocks that'll roll back in, and you know, when you get a rock that rolls back in as you're grading, what happens? Well, it throws the dozer up on you, and you got to back up and start over. There again, if this blade was a little wider, that would solve both of those problems: visibility to the point of the blade, or to the tip of the blade, and the rollback underneath the tracks that you get when you're grading. The other thing, the blade is too low. You look at a Cat or a Komatsu or almost any other dozer, the blade's probably 8 to 12 inches higher than what this is. So again, you get into a pile of dirt that you're pushing, because the machine's got plenty of power to move the dirt. What happens? Well, all this dirt builds up and it all rolls back over the top of the blade down here on top of your cylinders and everything, and gets rocks down in there hitting hoses. Every time you get into a large pile of dirt with this machine, the dirt's going over top of the blade all the time. So the blade needs to be about 8 to 12 inches taller for this size machine. I don't understand the reason why they wouldn't have it like that, but that is what it is. Another thing I found in some of these hoses, if you look down in here, they run them through these little guides here. So these hoses should, number one, they should have brakes in them. Where a guy, we had this hose right here, I believe in one of these here blew on me one time, right in this area. It just rubbed through on one of these little guides. Well, that hose was 11 feet long. So from there all the way back through all this stuff, all the way back into underneath the machine, was 11-foot hose, and it broke right here. So if these hoses in places should have had brakes like right here, we could have replaced a 3-foot hose instead of an 11-foot hose and only spent about an hour. But instead we spent almost a whole day fixing that one hose because of that. The machine's got a high center of gravity too. You're a good bit higher up in this machine, which makes it a little bit awkward from an operator's point of view to me. It's just sets up a little too high. But it's still, like I say, it's a good machine. Just some of the cons that I've found. Okay, so some other things we're going to talk about now is the design on the undercarriage here. And part of it is going back to these hoses that I talked about that was 11 feet long that run back through here. So if you see the way they're routed here, all this mud and dirt gets packed in here. When you're running this machine, all this through here just gets totally packed full of rock and dirt and mud. So these hoses really should have been routed up higher up through here, below this, and coming into here somewhere to keep it out of all that dirt and debris and mud and so forth. Another problem with this undercarriage is, if you look under here, in case you got this big gap in here, there's a hole in here. If you can see the camera down, I can stick my hand down in here. So you would think, okay, yeah, that's good, the dirt and the rocks fall down in and out, and that's fine. Well, that's not what happens actually. And this has only got 1,800 hours, and from rocks falling in and getting wedged in that cavity in there, here's the bolts on the back side of your sprocket. The end of that bolt is already wore down, probably a 1/4 inch from the size of it right there. If you can see, all these bolt heads, the end of these bolts are all being rubbed through by rocks that get jammed, and that's in 1,850 hours. So what happens at 4,000 hours? How much of that bolt's going to be left? We're running in shaly material around here. We're not in limestone or sandstone or anything like that. We're in just regular dirt, loose shale and so forth. That there, if you look on other machines, that cavity doesn't exist. All that is closed off around those sprockets, so that sprocket and the back side of that is protected. Okay, so another thing I noticed when I was comparing machines here recently on looking at new ones is the final drives. Now we haven't had any problems out of the final drive of this case, but when you look at this housing here on the size of this final drive, it's a pretty small setup here for this size machine. When you go look at the Caterpillar final drive is about that big and comes out about this far. So it's a huge gear setup, final drive setup in the Cat compared to the case. So long term down the road, you know, that might be something that fails on these a little sooner than the Cat. So that's something that I noticed just recently here when comparing other machines. All right, so we're going to talk about the motor and some other things here. So we've had the machine 4.5 years. We got 1,850 hours on it. We've had a few little issues. The first major thing we had happen to it really was a computer. A mouse had a nest in there. We believe maybe the mouse had something to do with it, but after I pulled that, they got the computer out and swapped it out. It was really a sealed unit, so I don't really see how the mouse really could have affected that, because the wires weren't tore up. The CPU was actually bad, so that was about a $4,000 fix, and that was just after a couple hundred hours of having it. So I was really disappointed in that. Now, the only other thing that we've had go wrong with this machine, believe it or not, is wiring. The parts weren't bad, the wiring. So if you look in here in these wiring harnesses, here's one of them. Here's one of them. We got this stuff taped up here. We've worked on all this stuff, these little wires and these wiring harnesses here. Them are a little bigger, but some of these are much smaller. You can see here where we've made a connection. These little wires and these harnesses, my air conditioning quit working last summer. We couldn't figure it out. Well, I had the case service tech come out, and the guy, he's good. But what it come down to was those little wires, there's like one little strand of copper inside that protective coating on them wires in that big wiring harness. They're just getting hot and brittle and falling apart. So the wires, 2 different times now, we've had problems where the wires and the wiring harnesses are literally just breaking and falling apart. It caused the air conditioner not to work. It cost me $2,000 for a 10-cent fix of a wire connector, but to be able to figure out what the problem was cost me $2,000. So that's a little frustrating. The service tech suggested maybe putting a new wiring harness in, but what's that really going to fix? If this is 1,850 hours and I've had 2 different times wires already breaking, are the new wires and the new wiring harness going to be any better than what's in there? Probably not. And how much would that cost? So I'm disappointed in the cheap wires that they used and all this, because you shouldn't be having problems like that with only 1,850 hours on a machine. But as far as mechanically, we've had no problems. Nothing has broke on this machine. Nothing has gotten loose. The blade, the hydraulic power, engine, any hard parts whatsoever other than that computer was the only problems that we had. This machine start up, run every day, and do its job. That's some of the cons. You know, I can't say that there's more pros than there is cons. It's a good machine. I'm not going to say it's a bad machine. I think Case needs to look at this video and go back to their engineering seriously and fix some of these things, and then you'd have less complaints. And I'm not really complaining. This is just an honest evaluation. Now, I've made a lot of money with this machine. I'm not going to say I haven't, but it could definitely use some improvements when it comes to some of the features on it that would make it. Then when a guy went to compare it to another machine, to a Case or to a Caterpillar or a Komatsu or something else, they would be looking at more comparable specs then. So here's the big question. Running this machine for 4.5 years, would I buy another one? Would I buy it again? Well, the answer to that is yes and no. So it depends if you're looking on the used market or if you're looking for something new. So when I bought this on the used market in 2017 is when we bought this. When I tried to look up a Cat or a Komatsu or a John Deere with the same hours in the same year, they were anywhere from 20 to 40,000 more on the used market. So that's what drew me to this Case. And I've always had Case backhoes. Good machines. We've had Case equipment in the past. So the value on the used market, I felt it was a good deal. And so if you're shopping for a used dozer and you come across a case that's 30,000–40,000 less than other brands, by all means, I would buy it. It's going to get the job done. It's going to do you good. Now, I recently went dozer shopping because I've put this machine, well, I've actually already sold this machine. It's just waiting to get shipped out. So I went to Caterpillar, I went to Case, I went to Komatsu, I went to John Deere. The Caterpillar and the Case were the only ones that offered the 2D, the grade control. The Caterpillar is called Slope Assist, and the Case has what's called their co-pilot system they now offer on the new 750s. So the brand new price of the Case versus the Caterpillar, believe it or not, the Case was $3,000 more than the price I got from Cat. And I went and I tried out the Caterpillar, and all the features that this machine doesn't have, the Caterpillar does have. So when I was looking at the brand new ones and doing the 5-year lease and so forth is what we usually do, well, the Caterpillar is what I decided to go with. But there again, if you're a Case man, you're probably going to go with Case. But so it's a good machine. If you're on a used market, I'd say jump on one if you get a good deal. But if you're buying brand new, I don't think the price comparison that I got, I couldn't turn away from the Cat. It just seemed like a better machine and a better all-around deal. So that's the way I went. So I hope you all found this video helpful. I'm not in any way at all downing Case. I still have Case equipment. I have a Case roller. Actually, I just sold my Case backhoe, but I've had several Case backhoes through the year. I cut my teeth on Case equipment, and this is a good machine. No doubt about it. But this time around, buying a new one, I just decided to go a different way. But so at least now you know this is an unbiased report on this machine, because nobody's sponsoring me for this video, that's for sure. So it's a good machine. I told you the pros, I told you the cons. If some of those little features got straightened out, to me it would be right there with the rest of them. But again, hope you found it helpful, and look forward to some other cool videos in the future.